Document, Part 1. In the far reaches of space, humanity had finally found its place among the stars. For decades, Earth had dreamed of reaching beyond its solar system, of meeting other civilizations, and proving it was not alone in the vast universe. That dream became reality when humans made contact with the Varniks, a peaceful alien species known for their wisdom and technological advancements. The Varniks welcomed humanity into the galactic community, offering knowledge, resources, and friendship. Together, they formed an alliance, working side by side to explore new worlds and build a brighter future. Captain Daniel Hayes stood on the bridge of the human starship Aurora, watching as his crew coordinated with their Varnik counterparts. It was a routine mission mapping uncharted regions of space, but Daniel couldn't help feeling proud. Humanity had come so far in such a short time. The Varniks had taught them so much, from advanced energy systems to sustainable living techniques. In return, humans shared their creativity and determination, qualities that fascinated the Varniks. Ambassador Laura Bennett often joined Daniel on these missions. She was one of the key figures in forging the alliance between Earth and the Varniks. Her calm demeanor and sharp mind earned her respect from both sides. Today, she stood beside Daniel, reviewing data collected by their joint exploration team. "This region is rich in resources," Laura said, pointing at the holographic display. "If we can establish a base here, it could benefit everyone." Daniel nodded, agreed. "But let's make sure we proceed carefully. We don't want to upset the balance of this ecosystem." He glanced at the Varnik officer across the room, who gave him a nod of approval. Communication between humans and Varniks wasn't always easy, but over time, they had learned to understand each other's intentions. The harmony between the two species seemed unbreakable, yet beneath the surface, tensions brewed elsewhere in the galaxy. The Galactic Council, a powerful governing body, overseeing countless civilizations, viewed the growing bond between Earth and the Varniks with suspicion. Some members of the Council saw humanity as unpredictable, even dangerous. They feared that Earth's rapid progress, fueled by Varnik assistance, might upset the delicate power structure they had maintained for centuries. Despite these concerns, no one expected what happened next. It began during a diplomatic summit aboard the Council's flagship, the Ecliptica. Representatives from dozens of species gathered to discuss trade agreements and territorial disputes. Humanity sent its best diplomats, including Ambassador Laura, along with a small contingent of military personnel, led by Captain Daniel. The Varniks were also present, eager to strengthen ties with both Earth and the Council. The meeting started, peacefully enough. Leaders exchanged greetings and discussed proposals for mutual cooperation. Then, without warning, chaos erupted. Alarms blared as armed Council soldiers stormed into the chamber. Before anyone could react, they opened fire on the Varnik delegation. Screams filled the air as laser blasts cut down the unsuspecting aliens. "What's happening?" Laura shouted, ducking behind a table as shots ricocheted around the room. Daniel grabbed her arm, pulling her to safety. His training kicked in instantly. "Stay low," he ordered, scanning the area for an escape route. Through the smoke and confusion, Daniel spotted a group of Varnik survivors trying to flee. One of them, a young scientist named Kale, caught his eye. Kale clutched a small device in his hands. Something important, judging by the desperate way he held onto it. Without hesitation, Daniel charged toward him, firing back at the attackers to cover their retreat. "Follow me," Daniel yelled, guiding Kale and a few others toward an emergency exit. Behind them, more Council troops poured into the room, determined to leave no witnesses. The sound of footsteps echoed closer, urging Daniel to move faster. He knew they wouldn't last long against such overwhelming numbers. Reaching the corridor outside, Daniel activated his communicator. "This is Captain Hayes of the Aurora. We're under attack. Request immediate evacuation." Static crackled in response before a voice broke through. "Captain, We're locked down. The Council has disabled all outgoing transmissions. Daniel cursed under his breath. They were on their own. Turning to the frightened group behind him, he quickly formulated a plan. We need to reach the docking bay. There's a shuttle there. It's our only chance. As they ran, Kale spoke up, his voice trembling. They killed everyone. Why would they do this? Daniel didn't have an answer. All he knew was that the Council had betrayed them, and now, survival was their top priority. The journey to the docking bay felt like an eternity. Every corner they turned brought the risk of running into more soldiers. At one point they encountered a patrol. Daniel signaled for silence, leading the group into a nearby storage room. They waited, hearts pounding, as the footsteps passed by. Finally, they reached the bay. To their relief, the shuttle was still intact. Daniel punched in the access code, and the hatch slid open. "Get inside," he ordered. As the others scrambled aboard, he noticed Kale hesitating. The young Varnick looked at the device in his hand, then back at Daniel. "Take it," Kale said, pressing the object into Daniel's palm. "It contains proof of their plans. Show it to your leaders, please. Don't let my people die in vain." Before Daniel could respond, Kale darted away, disappearing into the shadows. Shocked, Daniel climbed aboard and sealed the hatch. Moments later, the shuttle launched, narrowly avoiding enemy fire as it streaked toward the safety of the Aurora. Back on the ship, Daniel relayed everything that had happened to his crew. News of the massacre spread quickly, leaving everyone stunned. How could the Council commit such an atrocity, and why? Laura stared at the device Kale had given Daniel, her expression grim. "Whatever's on here," she said softly, "it changes everything." Daniel nodded. "We need to get this back to Earth, fast." As the Aurora prepared to jump to hyperspace, Daniel gazed out at the stars. The trust they had built with the Varnicks was shattered forever. In its place was anger and a burning desire for justice. Whatever lay ahead, one thing was certain: Earth would not stand idly by while the Council slaughtered innocent lives. Document Part 2. The Aurora raced through the void of space, its engines humming with urgency. Captain Daniel Hayes stood on the bridge, his hands gripping the railing as he stared at the navigation console. The ship was still hours away from Earth, but every second felt like an eternity. The weight of what had happened pressed heavily on his shoulders. The Council's betrayal wasn't just an attack on the Varnicks, it was an attack on everything humanity had worked so hard to achieve in the galaxy. Ambassador Laura Bennett sat nearby, her face pale but resolute. She cradled the small device Kale had entrusted to them, turning it over in her hands as if trying to decipher its secrets without even opening it. "We need to be ready," she said finally, breaking the silence. "When we get back, people are going to want answers. They're going to demand action." Daniel nodded, though his mind was elsewhere. He kept replaying the events of the massacre in his head, the screams, the flashes of light, the lifeless bodies of the Varnick delegation lying scattered across the chamber. It was a scene he knew would haunt him for the rest of his life. But more than that, he couldn't shake the feeling of guilt. Could they have done something to prevent it? Should they have seen this coming? "Captain," Lieutenant Eric Cole called out, interrupting Daniel's thoughts. Eric was one of the youngest officers on board, but his sharp instincts and quick thinking had earned him a spot on the Aurora. "We've picked up a transmission from Earth. President Carter is calling for an emergency meeting at the United Nations Space Command headquarters. Everyone who can attend is being summoned." Daniel sighed. Of course he is. He glanced at Laura, who gave him a knowing look. They both understood what this meant. Humanity was about to face one of the toughest decisions in its history, whether to retaliate against the Galactic Council or try to negotiate peace after such a brutal act. Back on Earth, news of the massacre spread like wildfire. By the time the Aurora entered orbit, social media feeds were flooded with images and videos shared by eyewitnesses aboard other ships. The world watched in horror as footage of the Council soldiers firing on unarmed Varniks played on endless loops. Protests erupted outside government buildings, with crowds chanting slogans like "Justice for the Varniks" and "No more betrayal." President Robert Carter addressed the nation from the Oval Office, his usual calm demeanor replaced by visible frustration. "What happened aboard the Ecliptica is nothing short of barbaric," he declared. "The Galactic Council has crossed a line that cannot be uncrossed. We will not tolerate such atrocities, nor will we stand idly by while our allies are slaughtered." But behind closed doors, the mood was far less united. Inside the United Nations Space Command headquarters, leaders from around the globe gathered in a tense conference room. Maps of the galaxy covered the walls, and holographic displays showed potential targets for retaliation. Yet, despite the high-tech surroundings, the atmosphere was thick with uncertainty. Commander Rachel Monroe stood at the center of the room, her arms crossed as she listened to the arguments swirling around her. A decorated military officer known for her strategic brilliance, Rachel had been appointed to lead any potential counterattack against the Council. Now, she faced resistance from those who believed war was too risky. "We don't have the resources to fight them," General Stephen Grant argued, slamming his fist on the table. "They outnumber us, outgun us, and have centuries of experience in interstellar warfare. If we strike back, they'll crush us." Rachel turned to him, her eyes blazing with determination. "And if we do nothing, what then?" She shot back. "Do we let them think they can walk all over us? Do we let them kill again without consequence? Because make no mistake, this won't stop with the Var. Once they see how weak we are, they'll come for us next." Her words struck a nerve. Murmurs rippled through the room as others began to nod in agreement. Still, not everyone was convinced. Some leaders worried about the cost, not just in terms of lives lost but also in terms of Earth's standing in the galaxy. Would retaliation isolate humanity further? Would it push neutral species into siding with the Council? It was Ambassador Laura who broke the deadlock. Stepping forward, she held up the device Kale had given them. "This contains evidence," she said firmly. "Evidence of the Council's plans, evidence of their crimes. If you'll allow me to present it, I believe it will change your perspective." The room fell silent as Laura connected the device to the main display. Files and recordings began to play, revealing the Council's true motives. They hadn't attacked the Varniks because they posed a threat. They had attacked because the Varniks refused to comply with demands to share their most advanced technologies. Worse still, the files hinted at a larger agenda. The Council planned to use these technologies to consolidate power, enslaving weaker species in the process. As the implications sank in, the mood shifted. Even General Stephen, who had been so vocal against retaliation, looked shaken. "If this is true," he started, trailing off as he struggled to find the right words. "It is true," Laura interrupted, "and if we don't act, we'll be next." President Carter leaned forward, his expression grim. "Then it seems we have no choice. Humanity must respond. But how?" Rachel stepped forward once more, already prepared with a plan. "We hit them where it hurts," she said. "Their supply lines, their outposts, their research facilities. We disrupt their operations and force them to divert resources away from their core territories. It won't be easy, but it's our best chance to send a message. Earth won't back down." There were nods of approval, though some faces remained skeptical. One of the biggest challenges would be rallying public support. While many citizens were outraged by the massacre, others feared the consequences of going to war. Journalists, like Emily Dawson, fueled this fear with articles questioning the wisdom of taking on such a powerful enemy. Emily's latest piece, titled "Are We Ready for War?" dominated headlines. In it, she criticized the government's rush toward conflict, pointing out the lack of preparation and the overwhelming odds stacked against humanity. Her words, resonated with a significant portion of the population, sparking protests outside military bases and calls for peaceful negotiations instead. Amidst the chaos, Captain Daniel found himself caught between two worlds. On one hand, he understood the need for caution. Earth's forces were stretched thin, and a full-scale war could devastate the planet's fragile economy. On the other hand, he couldn't ignore the anger boiling inside him. The Council had murdered innocent beings in cold blood, including friends he had grown to trust during his time with the Vorniks. How could anyone justify letting that go unpunished? That night, unable to sleep, Daniel sought out Lieutenant Eric in the crew lounge. The younger man was sitting alone, staring at a cup of coffee that had long gone cold. When Daniel joined him, Eric looked up, surprised. "Couldn't sleep either?" he asked. "No," Daniel admitted. "Too much on my mind." Eric nodded. "Me too. I keep thinking about Kale. What happened to him? Did he make it out alive?" Daniel hesitated. He didn't have an answer, and he doubted they ever would. "I hope so," he said finally. "He risked everything to give us that device. The least we can do is honor his sacrifice." For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Eric broke the silence. "Do you think we're doing the right thing? Going to war, I mean?" Daniel sighed. "I don't know. All I know is that we can't let the Council get away with what they did. If we don't stand up now, who will?" Eric seemed to consider this, then nodded slowly. "You're right. We owe it to the Varniks and to ourselves to fight back." The conversation ended there, but it stayed with Daniel long after he returned to his quarters. As he lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, he realized something important. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about proving that humanity had a place in the galaxy, a place worth fighting for. By morning, the decision had been made. Earth would respond to the Council's betrayal with fire. Resources were mobilized, troops were called up, and factories began producing weapons at an unprecedented rate. The stage was set for humanity's first major conflict in the stars. Whether they emerged victorious or defeated remained to be seen, but one thing was certain: Earth would not go down without a fight. Document. Part 3. The days following the decision to retaliate were a blur of activity. Earth transformed into a hive of preparation, with every available resource redirected toward the war effort. Factories that once produced cars and electronics now churned out starship components and laser cannons. Workers labored around the clock, their faces streaked with sweat and determination. The air buzzed with a sense of urgency, as if everyone understood that the fate of humanity depended on their efforts. At the heart of this transformation was Chief Designer Kevin Porter, a middle-aged engineer known for his unconventional ideas and relentless drive. Kevin had spent most of his career designing spacecraft for exploration missions, but now he found himself redesigning old warships into deadly combat vessels. His workshop was a chaotic mess of blueprints, tools, and half-assembled prototypes. Despite the disorder, Kevin moved with purpose, barking orders at his team while sketching out new designs on a tablet. "We need more firepower," he muttered to himself, staring at a holographic model of a frigate. "If we're going up against the Council, we can't afford to be outgunned." His assistant, Sarah Mitchell, handed him a cup of coffee. "You've been working non-stop for 3 days," she said. "When's the last time you slept?" Kevin waved her off. "Sleep is for people who aren't trying to save the planet. Besides, I'll rest when this is over, if we win." Sarah gave him a worried look but didn't argue. She knew better than to try reasoning with Kevin when he got like this. Instead, she focused on helping him refine the ship designs, adding suggestions based on feedback from military pilots. Meanwhile, at the United Nations Space Command training facility, pilots like Lieutenant Jessica Lane pushed themselves harder than ever before. The Council's ships were faster, more maneuverable, and equipped with superior weapons. To stand a chance, humanity's pilots needed to rely on skill and strategy rather than brute force. Jessica sat in the cockpit of a simulator, her hands gripping the controls as she navigated through a virtual battlefield. Enemy fighters swarmed around her, firing lasers that streaked past her ship. Sweat dripped down her forehead as she executed a series of tight turns, narrowly avoiding collisions. Her instructor watched from the observation deck, nodding approvingly. "Good reflexes," the instructor said over the comms. "But remember, you're not just flying, you're thinking. Anticipate their moves, and stay one step ahead." Jessica gritted her teeth. She hated being reminded of her mistakes, especially when lives would soon depend on her performance. Still, she forced herself to focus, replaying the instructor's advice in her mind. By the end of the session, her scores had improved significantly, earning her a rare compliment from the usually stern instructor. Outside the simulator's other trainees gathered in groups, discussing tactics and sharing tips. Some were veterans with years of experience. Others were fresh recruits eager to prove themselves. Despite their differences, they all shared a common goal: to protect Earth and avenge the Varnics, while the pilots honed their skills. Intelligence. Officer Alex Rivera worked tirelessly to decode the data recovered from Kale's device. Alex was a quiet man in his early 30s, with sharp eyes and an even sharper mind. He rarely spoke unless necessary, preferring to let his work speak for itself. Day and night, he pored over files and recordings, searching for any information that could give humanity an edge. One evening, as Alex scrolled through lines of encrypted text, something caught his attention, a pattern hidden within the code. At first glance, it seemed random, but upon closer inspection, it revealed coordinates to several council outposts. Excited, Alex cross-referenced the locations with star maps, confirming they matched supply depots and communication hubs. "This is it," he whispered to himself, leaning back in his chair. "This could be our opening move." He immediately forwarded the findings to Commander Rachel Monroe, who wasted no time incorporating them into her battle plans. With these weak points identified, humanity finally had a target list for its first strike. Despite the progress, not everyone supported the war effort. Across major cities, protests erupted as citizens voiced their fears about the consequences of retaliation. Journalist Emily Dawson continued to criticize the government's decision, publishing articles that questioned whether humanity was ready for such a conflict. Her words resonated with many, fueling anti-war sentiment among those who believed diplomacy should be prioritized over violence. In Washington, D.C., thousands of demonstrators gathered outside the Capitol building, holding signs that read "Peace over War" and "Stop the Madness." Among them was Michael Turner, a young activist who had lost his brother during a previous space mission. Michael stood on a makeshift stage, addressing the crowd with passion. "They tell us we have no choice," he shouted, his voice amplified by a megaphone. "They say we must fight or die. But what happens after we fight? Do we really think we can beat the Council? Or are we just throwing away lives for nothing?" The crowd cheered, their frustration palpable. For Michael and others like him, the idea of going to war felt reckless and unnecessary. They argued that humanity should seek allies instead of enemies, using diplomacy to build bridges rather than destroy them. Inside the Capitol, President Robert Carter watched footage of the protests with growing concern. He understood the public's fears, but he also knew that backing down wasn't an option. The Council had already shown its true colors, and retreat would only embolden them further. Still, he couldn't ignore the pressure mounting from both sides. "A house divided cannot stand," he murmured to himself, quoting an old saying. Turning to his advisors, he asked, "How do we unite the people? How do we convince them that this fight is worth it?" Laura Bennett offered a suggestion. "We show them the truth," she said. "Not just the evidence from Kale's device, but the stories of the Varnics, their culture, their dreams, their contributions to our alliance. Let the world see what we've lost, and why we must fight to honor their memory." President Carter nodded thoughtfully. It was a risky strategy, but it might be their best chance to rally support over the next few days. Laura worked with media outlets to create documentaries and interviews highlighting the Varnick's legacy. These pieces aired globally, reaching millions of viewers and sparking renewed outrage against the council. Slowly, but surely, public opinion began to shift. While some remained opposed to war, many others embraced the call to action. Volunteers signed up for military service in droves, motivated by images of fallen Varnick diplomats and promises of justice. Even skeptics like General Stephen Grant admitted that humanity seemed more united than ever before. As the final preparations neared completion, Captain Daniel Hayes returned to the Aurora, where his crew awaited orders. The ship had undergone significant upgrades under Kevin Porter's supervision, transforming it into a formidable war vessel. Its sleek hull now bristled with weapons turrets, and its engines roared with newfound power. Standing on the bridge, Daniel surveyed his team. Each member wore a determined expression, ready to face whatever lay ahead. He cleared his throat, drawing their attention. "Today marks the beginning of a new chapter for humanity," he said, his voice steady despite the weight of his words. "We go into this fight not because we seek revenge, but because we refuse to let tyranny go unchecked. The Council has shown us their true nature, and now it's our turn to show them ours." Applause broke out across the room, followed by cheers of agreement. For the first time in weeks, Daniel allowed himself a small smile. Whatever challenges awaited them, he knew they wouldn't face them alone. Together, humanity would rise, fall as one. With that, the Aurora lifted off, joining a fleet of newly outfitted ships heading toward the designated targets. As Earth faded into the distance, Daniel gazed out at the stars, his resolve stronger than ever. The Council had made a grave mistake in underestimating humanity. Soon, they would learn the price of betrayal. Document Part 4. The fleet moved silently through the darkness of space, a convoy of ships carrying humanity's hopes and fears into the unknown. Captain Daniel Hayes stood on the bridge of the Aurora, his eyes fixed on the glowing displays that tracked their progress. The journey to the Council's first target was long, giving him too much time to think. Doubts crept into his mind like shadows, whispering questions he couldn't ignore. Was Earth ready for this? Could they truly stand against an enemy so powerful? Lieutenant Eric Cole noticed Daniel's quiet demeanor and approached him cautiously. "You've been standing here for hours," Eric said gently. "Maybe you should get some rest." Daniel shook his head. "I can't. Not yet." He turned to face Eric, his expression heavy with worry. "What if we're wrong about this? What if we're walking into a trap?" Eric hesitated before responding. He had asked himself the same question countless times, but knew better than to let fear take over. "We've done everything we can to prepare," he said finally. "The Council thinks we're weak, that we'll back down. They don't know what we're capable of." Daniel nodded slowly, though his unease didn't fade. "Let's hope you're right." Back on Earth, cracks in unity began to show. While many rallied behind the war effort, others grew increasingly vocal in their opposition. Journalist Emily Dawson continued her campaign against the conflict, publishing articles that painted the government as reckless and irresponsible. Her latest piece, titled "The Cost of War," detailed the economic strain caused by the mobilization, and warned of the potential loss of life. "Every ship we build is money taken from schools, hospitals, and homes," she wrote. "Every soldier sent into battle is someone's child, sibling, or parent. Is this really the future we want?" Her words struck a chord with many, reigniting protests across the globe. In New York City, thousands gathered outside the United Nations Space Command headquarters, chanting slogans like "No more bloodshed" and "Talk, don't fight." Among them was Michael Turner, who had become a prominent figure in the anti-war movement. "We're not cowards for wanting peace," Michael told the crowd, his voice amplified by a megaphone. "We're smart, We're choosing survival over destruction. Tell the council we won't play their game." His speech earned applause, but it also drew criticism from those who supported the war. Online forums buzzed with heated debates, dividing families, friends, and communities. Some accused Michael and Emily of undermining humanity's chances of victory, while others praised them for speaking truth to power. Even within the military, doubts lingered. General Stephen Grant, once a staunch opponent of retaliation, now found himself torn between duty and conscience. As head of logistics, he oversaw the distribution of resources to the fleet, ensuring every ship was equipped for battle. Yet, late at night, he couldn't shake the feeling that they were gambling with humanity's future. One evening, Stephen confided in Commander Rachel Monroe, who had become a close ally despite their earlier disagreements. "What happens if we lose?" he asked, his voice low. "If the council wipes us out, who will remember the Varniks? Who will carry their story forward?" Rachel placed a hand on his shoulder. "We don't have the luxury of thinking about failure," she said firmly. "All we can do is fight with everything we have. If we fall, at least we'll know we tried." Stephen sighed, nodding reluctantly. Deep down, he admired Rachel's resolve, even if he didn't fully share it. Still, he couldn't help wondering how many lives would be lost in the process. On board the Aurora, tensions ran high as the fleet approached its first target, a remote supply depot used by the Council to resupply its warships. Intelligence Officer Alex Rivera had identified the location as a weak point in the Council's operations, making it an ideal starting point for humanity's offensive. The plan was simple: disable the depot, disrupt the Council's supply lines, and send a message that Earth wouldn't back down. As the ships entered the system, Lieutenant Jessica Lane prepared her squadron for combat. Pilots suited up in their flight gear, double-checking their weapons, and running final diagnostics on their fighters. Jessica paced among them, offering encouragement and answering last-minute questions. "This is it," she said, her voice steady despite the nerves twisting in her stomach. "We've trained for this moment. Trust your instincts, stick to the plan, and watch each other's backs. We're not just fighting for ourselves, we're fighting for everyone back home." Her words lifted spirits, and the pilots exchanged determined glances. When the order came to launch, they climbed into their cockpits without hesitation. One by one, the fighters shot out of the hangar bay, forming a tight formation as they approached the depot. From the bridge of the Aurora, Daniel watched the operation unfold on the main display. The depot loomed ahead, its defenses already scrambling to respond. Council ships emerged from nearby stations, moving to intercept the human fleet. It was clear the element of surprise had worn off, but Daniel refused to retreat. "Hold position," he ordered, his voice calm but commanding. "Support the fighters and keep those ships off our backs." The battle erupted in flashes of light. As lasers streaked across the void, Jessica led her squadron in a daring maneuver, splitting into two groups to flank the Council forces. Their smaller, more agile fighters darted around the larger enemy ships, targeting weak points and disabling weapons systems. Despite being outnumbered, the humans fought with ferocity, refusing to give ground back on the Aurora. Chief Engineer Kevin Porter monitored the ship's systems, ensuring the vessel could withstand the intense barrage of fire. Sweat dripped down his face as alarms blared, warning of incoming attacks. "Shields are holding," he reported, his voice strained, "but we can't take much more of this." Daniel clenched his fists, knowing they were running out of time. "Keep pushing," he urged. "We're almost there." Moments later, Jessica's squadron succeeded in breaching the depot's defenses. Explosions lit up the darkness as missiles struck key facilities, crippling the Council's ability to refuel and rearm its ships. Cheers erupted on the Aurora's bridge, but Daniel's relief was short-lived. The Council reinforcements were closing in, forcing the fleet to disengage before they were overwhelmed. "Retreat," he ordered, his tone sharp. Fall back to designated coordinates. The ships broke away from the battle, regrouping at a safe distance. Though battered and bruised, the fleet had achieved its objective. For the first time, humanity had struck a blow against the Council and survived to tell the tale, as the fleet limped toward a hidden repair station. News of the victory spread back to Earth. Social media feeds exploded with messages of hope and pride, celebrating the bravery of the pilots and crew. President Robert Carter addressed the nation, praising their efforts and reaffirming humanity's determination to see the fight through. "This is only the beginning," he declared. "The Council thought we would crumble under pressure, but they underestimated us. Together, we will protect our planet, honor our allies, and secure our place among the stars." Yet, not everyone shared the optimism. Emily Dawson published a new article, questioning whether the cost of the victory was worth it. Casualty reports listed dozens of pilots killed or missing, including names that hit close to home for many readers. Her words sparked renewed debate, dividing public opinion further. For Captain Daniel, the victory felt hollow. Yes, they had damaged the Council's operations, but at what price? As he stared at the stars from the Aurora's viewport, he couldn't help wondering how many more battles lay ahead, and how many more lives would be lost before it was over. Still, there was no turning back now. Humanity had drawn a line in the sand, and the Council had crossed it. Whatever happened next, Earth would face it together. Document Part 5. The aftermath of the first battle left humanity with a mix of hope and unease. The victory at the Council's supply depot was proof that Earth could hold its own against a superior enemy. But the cost had been high. Dozens of pilots and crew members were lost, their names added to a growing list of casualties. For those who survived, the weight of what they had done and what lay ahead was impossible to ignore. On board the Aurora, Captain Daniel Hayes walked through the corridors, his boots echoing softly against the metal floors. He stopped outside the medical bay, where injured crew members were being treated. Through the open door, he saw Lieutenant Jessica Lane sitting on a bed, her arm bandaged and her face pale. A doctor hovered nearby, checking her vitals, but Jessica waved him off impatiently. "I'm fine," she insisted, though her voice lacked its usual confidence. "Just a scratch?" Daniel stepped inside, drawing her attention. "You did good out there," he said, offering a small smile. "We couldn't have done it without you." Jessica nodded, but her expression remained troubled. "It doesn't feel like a win," she admitted quietly. "Too many people didn't come back." Daniel understood her sentiment all too well. Victory in war often came at a price, and this time was no different. Still, he knew morale mattered, now more than ever. "We honor them by finishing what we started," he told her firmly. "They gave everything for this fight, and we owe it to them to see it through." Jessica looked away, her jaw tightening as she fought back tears. After a moment, she nodded again. "You're right, we keep going." Back on Earth, the news of the successful strike against the Council brought both celebration and controversy. Public opinion remained divided, with some hailing the fleet as heroes while others questioned whether the mission was worth the loss of life. Journalist Emily Dawson continued to publish articles criticizing the war effort, her words striking a chord with those who feared escalating violence. "This so-called victory is nothing more than a drop in the ocean," she wrote in her latest piece. "Yes, we damaged one depot, but at what cost? The Council has countless resources at their disposal. They won't stop until they've crushed us or until we destroy ourselves trying to resist." Her article sparked heated debates, online and offline. Protesters gathered outside government buildings, holding signs that read "Stop the killing and peace is possible." Among them was Michael Turner, whose speeches grew increasingly passionate as the days passed. "We're not cowards for wanting peace," Michael shouted to a cheering crowd. "We're survivors. We know what happens when wars spiral out of control. Tell the council we won't play their game. Yet, despite the protests, support for the war effort also surged. Social media feeds filled with messages of gratitude for the soldiers and pilots risking their lives. Families of fallen crew members spoke out, urging humanity to continue fighting in memory of their loved ones. President Robert Carter seized the opportunity to rally the public, delivering a speech that emphasized unity and resilience. The council thought we would crumble under pressure, he declared during a televised address. But they underestimated us. Humanity has always risen to meet challenges, no matter how great. Together, we will protect our planet, honor our allies, and secure our place among the stars. His words resonated deeply with many, especially those directly affected by the conflict. Mothers, fathers, siblings, and friends of the fallen vowed to support the war effort, determined to ensure their sacrifices weren't in vain. Volunteers flooded recruitment centers, eager to join the fight. Factories worked around the clock, producing new ships and weapons to replace those lost in battle. Meanwhile, aboard the Aurora, Intelligence Officer Alex Rivera analyzed data recovered during the attack on the supply depot. Hidden within the wreckage were fragments of communication logs and operational plans, hinting at the Council's next moves. Alex pored over the information tirelessly, piecing together clues that might give humanity an edge in future battles. "What are you working on?" Lieutenant Eric Cole asked, leaning over Alex's shoulder. The young officer had become a frequent visitor to the intelligence lab, curious about Alex's findings. Alex glanced up briefly before returning his focus to the screen. "I think I found something," he said, excitement creeping into his voice. "These coordinates, they match a heavily fortified outpost near the edge of Council territory. It's a key relay station for their communications network. If we take it out, we could cripple their ability to coordinate attacks." Eric frowned. "That sounds risky. Won't it be heavily guarded?" "Of course," Alex replied. "But if we plan carefully, we might be able to pull it off. We just need to hit them hard and fast." Eric nodded thoughtfully. "Let me know if you need help running simulations or testing strategies." Alex smiled faintly. "Thanks. I'll probably take you up on that." As preparations began for the next phase of the offensive, tensions simmered within the fleet. General Stephen Grant, still grappling with doubts about the war, voiced concerns during a strategy meeting on board the flagship Pegasus. Commander Rachel Monroe led the discussion, outlining the plan to assault the relay station. "We don't have the firepower to engage them head-on," Stephen argued, his tone firm. "If we lose this battle, we risk losing the entire fleet. Is it worth the gamble?" Rachel turned to face him, her expression unwavering. "We can't afford to sit back and wait for the Council to make the next move. They'll only grow stronger. If we let them, this is our chance to tip the scales in our favor." Stephen opened his mouth to protest but hesitated, seeing the resolve in her eyes. Finally, he sighed. "Fine, but we'd better make sure every detail is covered." With the decision made, the fleet set course for the relay station. Pilots trained rigorously, simulating scenarios and refining tactics. Engineers worked tirelessly to repair damage from the previous battle and upgrade weapons systems. Morale wavered at times, but leaders like Rachel and Daniel reminded everyone why they were fighting, not just for revenge, but for survival. When the day of the assault arrived, the fleet approached the target cautiously, cloaked in stealth technology developed by Chief Engineer Kevin Porter. The relay station loomed ahead, surrounded by defensive turrets and patrol ships. As the Aurora entered range, Daniel addressed his crew over the intercom. "This is it," he said, his voice steady. "Stick to the plan, stay sharp, and watch each other's backs. Let's show the Council what humanity is made of." The order came to launch, and fighters streamed out of the hangar bays, diving toward the station. Jessica led her squadron in a daring maneuver, luring enemy ships away from the main force while bombers targeted the relay's core systems. Explosions lit up the darkness as missiles struck critical infrastructure, disabling communications and cutting off reinforcements. Despite heavy resistance, the humans pressed on, their determination unshaken. On the bridge of the Aurora, alarms blared as Council ships closed in, forcing the fleet to split its focus between defending itself and completing the mission. Daniel gritted his teeth, issuing commands with precision. "Hold the line," he shouted. "We're almost there." Finally, a massive explosion engulfed the relay station, sending shockwaves rippling through space. Cheers erupted across the fleet as the station collapsed, severing the Council's communication network. Though battered and bruised, the humans regrouped and retreated to safety, leaving behind a smoking ruin. As the fleet limped toward a hidden repair base, news of the second victory spread back to Earth. Celebrations erupted in cities worldwide, with fireworks lighting up the night sky. Yet, amidst the jubilation, questions lingered. How long could humanity sustain this momentum? What would the Council do next? For Captain Daniel, the answer was clear. They had no choice but to keep fighting. The Council wouldn't stop until Earth was destroyed or until humanity proved it couldn't be broken. Whatever happened next, Daniel knew one thing for certain: they hadn't seen the worst of it yet.